According to the pre-classical Greek poet Homer, there lived a Bronze Age king named Sisyphus who founded the city of Ephyra, or modern Corinth. As king, Sisyphus was ruthless in his cunning, able to outsmart even the gods. In anticipation of his death, Sisyphus told his wife Merope not to perform traditional burial rituals, and instead leave his corpse in the open air. Despite this being an odd request, Merope was loyal and understood the assignment. When Sisyphus died, she left the king's corpse to rot in the city market, and it eventually washed up in the river Styx. In the underworld, Sisyphus presented his desecrated corpse to Persephone, the queen of Hades, and complained that Merope did him dirty. He claimed he should be allowed to return to Earth to take vengeance on his disrespectful wife. Persephone found Sisyphus' complaint valid and sent the king back to Greece to karate chop his widow. But upon his return to the land of the living, Sisyphus instead kicked back and dined on grapes and cheese, never seeking vengeance. Persephone was left flabbergasted and watched the king live decades more before a messenger of Hades finally caught up with him. For his deception, Sisyphus was cursed to roll a boulder up a hill, only for that boulder's weight to send it tumbling back down again just as it reached the crest. Again, and again, and again, for eternity. The story of Sisyphus may serve as an allegory that strikes a chord with modern civilians, who work ceaselessly with their bank accounts never even reaching 4 digits. Every time they feel like they're about to get ahead, their check engine light comes on, and that boulder rolls right back down the hill. Sometimes people are a victim of circumstance, and sometimes they do it to themselves by refusing to believe they reach the top of the hill, and they just keep pushing that boulder until it rolls back down the other side, because taking L's is so familiar to them that they don't know any other way. With what better parable then can we describe user a fucking artista, an Italian college student who made enough money to change his life, and then pissed it all away like cheap wine? Thrice. It is my honor to present his story, that it may serve as a warning to those who insist on living like Sisyphus. Ah, la vita italiana. Dolce vita, or the sweet life as the Italians say. Our honored trader resides in the Italian province of Veneto, the capital of which is Venice. Taking the moniker a fucking artista, our man conjures images of Italy's artistic heritage as he basks in the sun on the Venetian coast. But the dark truth about Italy is, if you are impoverished, La Dolce Vita does not exist. For the destitute, Italy is just Mexico in a fancy suit. And for Mr. Artista, this simply will not do. As an aging 21-year-old university student in the summer of 2022, our man needed to make a power move and grasp that Dolce Vita before it got away. And what better method than to invest? Unfortunately, investing in the Italian stock market is just throwing money away, and American discount brokers like Robinhood don't exist in Europe. To reach US markets, Nostro Ragazzo found a workaround through the Israeli broker eToro, which, primarily being a crypto platform, plays by its own set of rules. Despite suffering from frequent outages, eToro's strange rules offer some advantages to the enterprising user, namely massive leverage and exotic financial instruments called contracts for difference, or CFDs. At their core, CFDs are contracts that allow traders to speculate with enormous leverage without owning the actual underlying stock, making them cheaper to trade than just buying or selling on margin. When FDs just aren't good enough, you turn to CFDs. They're somewhat comparable to options on futures, but CFDs have no expiration date. However, they are so risky and thinly regulated that they're not even allowed in the US. But as an Italian guy looking to use an Israeli crypto broker to trade leveraged derivatives on US stocks, the complexity was just part of the game. With little money of his own, this multi-pronged solution was the only suitable answer to his needs. In early summer of 2022, Artista systematically assessed US markets. Stonks were in freefall. The froth of the COVID bubble was dissolving, and capitalizing on this decline could turn rice into risotto. With $3,000 to his name, our man jammed the whole pot into his eToro account. Shorting the NASDAQ 100 through CFDs was the obvious move, and the madman went all in, stacking the margin allowance until he was adequately leveraged to his personal risk tolerance, at a modest multiple of 20x, a $60,000 short position riding on $3,000 cash. If this trade failed, he would surely be in massive debt, and the Mossad deployed to capture him from his villa. As the Italians say, allora. But to Artista's fortune, The first 2 weeks of June were devastating for tech stocks. As each of his short CFDs profited, he rolled to even more aggressive positions, compounding the gains and leverage to kingdom come. In just that short span, the Italian stallion and his cornucopia of leverage multiplied into 100 grand, a ginormous 33x. Such gains are rarely possible, even with the FDs that we know and love on Wall Street bets. But with maximally leveraged CFDs, our man made it happen. He withdrew all of it and rode into the Tuscan sun with a cold Prosecco. This alone could be the end of his story and put him in the history books. But was 100k enough? Certo no. As soon as his hangover wore off, Artista took 40 grand back out of his bank account and fed it right back into eToro. With markets still in decline, our bearish friend shorted Nasdaq CFDs again, just minutes before the US CPI was due to be released, ensnared by the desire to print even more euros. To the mortification of Jerome Powell and the Americans, raising the Fed rate was not enough to stem inflation, and CPI came in hot. The market reeled back, and Artista's short position nearly doubled to 70k. But this quick doubling was just the beginning. Since Italians do precisely no work all summer, our man had adequate time to trade continuously, bouncing in and out of leveraged positions against all odds, and giving the goddess Fortuna a run for her money. By late September, Il Capo di Borsa was just shy of 300 grand, and still had about 60k left in the bank from his original trade in August. This is it. This is the crest of the hill. Your boulder is sitting stationary at the top. Congratulations, La Dolce Vita secured. But was 360k enough for this mad lad? Certo no. It was the weekend of October 1st. Artista was due to return to university on Monday, October 3rd. He thought to himself, "Allora, how amazing would it be to hit $500,000 on my first day back at the class?" And besides, he hadn't missed yet, so why not? In a most foolhardy move, Il Gran Calzone even withdrew all 60k of remaining gains from his bank account to maximally stuff eToro. Classes were starting that morning, and if he was going to make $140,000 in the next few hours, he needed to strike fast. The clock was ticking. Before we stuff that ravioli, here's something special for the Canadians. This segment is sponsored by Moo. It has come to my attention that Canadians overpay for things. A 2-bedroom townhouse in Toronto is like 900 grand. Milk is $7 a gallon. The only thing Canadians don't overpay for is Kush, which is like $1 a gram. But the most important thing Canadians can finally stop overpaying for is broker commissions. Not only do your brokers tend to be terrible, but they're also expensive. Big bank brokers are charging $5 minimums to trade US equities. Options will cost you $10 a contract. Features that are free in the US get paywalled. And if you want to buy $10,000 worth of VOO stock, you're paying over $100 in commissions, or paying monthly for a premium plan at discount brokers like Wealthsimple. But the first discount broker without ridiculous fees just entered the scene, Moo. With $2 commissions for American stocks, Moo is the least expensive way to tap into the US stock market. $10,000 of VOO will cost you $2 in commission at Moo, a fraction of what Questrade or the banks want. Do the math and Moo wins every time. And by the way, Moo is the only broker with extended hours trading from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. With any luck, Moo will even force Canadian brokers to dial down their fees to compete, just like Robinhood did to the big brokers in the US. Hop on Moo now and you'll also get a $30 bonus with a qualifying deposit. Americans, something for us too. Get up to 16 free shares when you deposit. Use my referral in the description and you'll unlock the full reward. Keep more of your money and happy trading. Now, let's get back to our Italian artist. The date was October 3rd. Classes were starting shortly after sunrise, and our Vecchio was on the clock. At 2 a.m. Italy time, so 8 a.m. New York time, Artista put all 350 bands down at 20x leverage, betting a nominal face value of $7 million that the Nasdaq would continue its descent. With his trade open, he intended to stay awake through market hours, but fatigue was getting the best of him. And besides, classes were starting in 6 hours, and he needed some rest. With so many bearish indicators, he was entirely certain that the worst case scenario while he slept would be that the Nasdaq bounces 0.5% against him, causing a portfolio loss of 10%, which is apparently no big deal to him. Somehow, with that much skin on the line, Our boy fell asleep as the US market began trading. How you fall asleep with 350k on leveraged CFDs, I have no idea. I would have been huffing paint solvent to stay awake if that's what it took. Although I don't have direct evidence of this, I think it's more likely that he did stay awake. No one places a $350,000 trade and then decides it's time for a nap. I think saying he fell asleep is just an excuse so he doesn't have to admit that what happens next was entirely on him. Nevertheless, if you take his word at face value, our ragazzo opted to rest. In a few hours, he would surely wake up with $500,000 to his name, ready to walk into class like Casanova. Well, buona mattina, scopamico. Half a day later, our man woke up to get smacked across the face with thick stromboli. The leverage took his portfolio by storm, and our man was quickly crushed under a stampede of resurgent bulls. Most of his gains, and I'm talking over 300k, were gone. For all his bravado about using stop losses as risk management, Artista simply failed to set one before he slept. I also think he probably never slept at all and just traded like shit all morning. Was he distracted? Overconfident? We don't know. All we do know is that over the following month, he lost the rest. He was back down around $3,000 by the time he closed out. The boulder had rolled all the way back down the mountain. As Sisyphus, Artista was right back to where he started. A lesser man may have ended his story there, deep in despair. But was this the end for a fucking Artista? Nope. Artista was disturbed, but not destroyed. Reassessing markets in late October, he determined the bottom was in and decided to go long. Once again putting fate to the test, Artista traded with great avarice, with the next big win being a 254% overnight gain, bringing his portfolio to over 86k. Like the trains in Mussolini's Rome, Artista was back on track. By mid-November, our man was cruising through 180k. This second shot at salvation could have been his exit. What kind of pazzo would hold, waiting for a round figure of 200,000 before closing out? But of course he held. And held. And held. On December 13th, Artista posted a disturbing image. Dominated by greed, our man diamond-handed his portfolio all the way back down to under 3,000. A patently inexcusable 99% loss. The boulder had rolled down the hill again. For a second time, Sisyphus, Artista, was right back where he started. In fact, he was now down a few hundred. But was Artista finally ready to lay himself to rest? Certo no. After playing World of Tanks for the entire winter, Artista reappeared in April 2023 with a $9,000 portfolio refueled from his regular income. This time, he dramatically switched up his strategy by doing the exact same thing he did the last two times up the mountain. But as he worked his boulder for the third time, it so happens that the spring of 2023 was a great time to long the Nasdaq with a legally forbidden level of leverage. By early June, he was back at 70k, and by mid-June, 37 grand, but still chugging along. And as an extra slap in the face, it was around this time that eToro sent Artista a bottle of grappa, which is like spiked wine, because all Italian account holders of $250,000 or more get annual alcohol from eToro, which is actually really cool, I have to admit. Of course, by the time it arrived, Artista was still down 90% from his high, but eToro had already ordered the grappa, so they delivered it anyway. It was on September 24th, 2023, 13 months after his Sisyphean trading journey began, that Artista recounted how a year prior, when he turned 21, he was equipped with over $250,000. Then that day, on his 22nd birthday, he had 44,000. Still a remarkable increase from his 3k starting point, but a pale comparison to the 360k he once held. And that's exactly why he went back in. Given that most of his losses were from overnight holds, Artista is now determined to trade with greater speed. In a penetrating video of his portfolio, the big man rapidly combs through his trading history, where almost every trade is green. But if you pause and look at the timestamps, you'll see that almost all of the trades are open for less than an hour. You also see the effect of leverage in all its glory, where identical positions closed minutes apart swing from $1,000 losses to $8 gains. What I also notice in his trade history is that it's fluffed. The gains are much more frequent, but much smaller than the relatively longer term trades from that second roll up the hill. But maybe attempt number 3 will be the one where our homie learns how to withdraw without redepositing, or at least how to take a W. At the time of this writing in mid-October 2023, Artista has 29,000 remaining and holds short positions in anticipation of the October rally grinding to an early halt. Already, his bearish bet has him down more than 50% from his most recent high at 70k. But more importantly, I see no actual development or maturity from Artista. This unwillingness to change anything after multiple failed attempts shows me one thing. The man has no idea what the top of his mountain looks like. Even if he had reached his $500,000 on that ridiculous trade last October, I have no doubt he would have moved the goalposts to 1 million, then 2 million, carrying on indefinitely until his portfolio gave way under that stone. In fact, he was lucky he lost his money in December instead of January, because at least he didn't get stuck with a tax bill too. But there's always time to come around. And now in late October, I'm even amending this video, since if Artista is still holding, then he's surely up quite a few tens of thousands on this big market dip. And perhaps this time, I can talk some sense into him about buying some long-term holds with the gains. This early in his life, this money could set him up forever. Maybe this third attempt will be the final trek up the mountain, and Sisyphus can finally rest his stone at the top. But if I were a gambling man, and I sort of am, I'd wager that Artista will again be clawed back into the never-ending spiral of looking for more, and push his luck just a little too far. Again. A fucking Artista. Theta Gang would be proud to welcome you to our clan with open arms. Find the Discord link in the description. But whether you choose to carry on with your Sisyphean trading style, or join us on the dark side, your adventure is undoubtedly one to remember forever. Please accept this crown and take your place on the throne of degeneracy.
Who wants to be king?
Check out the rest of the channel to see more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.